I was just the Beaumont family's housekeeper, until I overheard a takeover plot that could destroy their finance empire. Now my husband's framed, and I'm all that stands between ruin and justice. I never meant to be a hero. My name is Celeste Alvarez, and for the past 6 years I've cared for the Beaumont's mansion in suburban Chicago, dusting marble columns, arranging fresh lilies in the foyer, and ensuring every board meeting at their private home office ran without a hitch. My husband, Mateo, works second shift at the car wash downtown, hands calloused, heart gentle. We share a modest apartment 3 miles away, and our life is simple. Early dinners of arroz con pollo, shared dreams of a small house, and weekends exploring thrift shops. That balance shattered the night I cleaned Mr. Beaumont's study. I was polishing the mahogany desk when I heard voices behind the French doors, murmurs too urgent to ignore. My pulse quickened as I recognized the deep, cultured tones of Damien Cross, CEO of Crosswell & Company, the Beaumont's fiercest competitors in the finance world. Alongside him stood Mrs. Beaumont herself, Helena Beaumont, her silver hair pinned back, voice trembling. Cross said, "Once the proxy agreement is executed, Beaumont Asset Holdings and the parent company will fall under Crosswell's control. Your family's empire will collapse, and there's no court in the state that can save it." Helena's gasp echoed in the silent hallway. "But my husband would never sign a deal that betrays his life's work." Cross smiled, cold as steel. "Your husband is indisposed. We have evidence of Mateo Alvarez's alleged embezzlement, enough to ruin him. Sign tonight, or we hand it over to the authorities." My heart stopped. Mateo? My kind, hard-working husband, accused of stealing from the Beaumonts? I pressed my back against the wall, every instinct screaming to run. But I stayed, listening as Cross outlined deadlines and forged documents, humiliation and prison looming for Mateo if Helena resisted. When their footsteps faded, I slipped inside. The desk drawers hid a folder labeled Priority Damien Cross. Inside, proxy agreements, forged signatures, and surveillance logs falsely implicating Mateo in unauthorized transfers. I clutched the folder to my chest, breath ragged. All day, I wrestled with panic. At dawn, I served Mr. Beaumont his coffee, unaware he'd returned early, and caught his warm good morning from the library. Guilt gnawed at me for withholding the truth. After breakfast, I stole away to the garden shed, rifled through my tote, and retrieved my phone. I texted my friend Marisol, an attorney I'd met at church, asking for urgent advice under the guise of employment concerns. Her reply, "Call me now. Don't wait." That afternoon, I watched Mrs. Beaumont glare at her husband across the breakfast table, eyes clouded with dread. She whispered something I couldn't hear, and he nodded gravely. Their world, once a fortress of privilege, was crumbling. That night, while Mateo slept, I spread the stolen documents across our kitchen table. My hands trembled, tracking forged notary stamps and false bank statements implicating him. I thought, if I don't act, Mateo goes to jail, and the Beaumont's empire falls to Crosswell. If I do act, I risk my job, our safety, and possibly my very life. I picked up my phone and dialed Marisol's number. Her calm voice guided me through next steps. Secure backup copies, arrange a dead drop at her office, and prepare for a motion to block the proxy agreement. She promised to meet me at midnight. By the time Mateo arrived with evening takeout, I was pale and determined. "Celeste?" he asked, concern wrinkling his brow. "What's wrong?" I showed him the forged documents. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to rage. "They're framing you," I said, voice low. "We have to stop them." He swallowed. "But we're just us. How do we take on Damien Cross and the Beaumonts?" I reached for his hand. "One step at a time. First, we expose the plot. Then, we'll see." He nodded, eyes fierce with trust. "I'm with you." I thought, courage isn't about strength, it's about love, and I would risk everything to protect my husband and the truth. Update 1. The hour before midnight felt both too short and forever long. My heart thudded against my ribs as I navigated back streets toward Marisol's law office, the wind tugging at my shawl. The photocopies of Crosswell & Co.'s forged proxy agreements and the surveillance logs accusing Mateo of embezzlement weighed heavy in my tote. If exposed, this evidence would shatter Croswell's takeover plan and clear Mateo's name. I pulled up to the old brick building Marisol had renovated into her boutique practice. Its lights glowed warmly through frosted windows. At the door, I squared my shoulders and rang the bell. Moments later, she opened, her sharp eyes softening when she saw my urgency. "Give me everything," she whispered, guiding me inside. Under the harsh glare of her desktop lamp, I laid out the documents. Marisol flipped through them with clinical precision, examining notary stamps, tracing phone records, and verifying email headers. "These are exactly what we need," she said, tapping her pen. "We'll file an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order against the proxy signatures. You did the right thing bringing these." A wave of relief coursed through me. "What about the surveillance logs? They've already gone to local detectives." Marisol frowned. "That's a problem. Croswell planted those logs with the police to strengthen his blackmail. We need to obtain the original server metadata to prove the logs were fabricated." My pulse quickened. "How do we get that?" She stood, pacing. "I have a former IT contact, Shane, who can extract metadata from Croswell's network if we can get him temporary access." I bit my lip. "He'll need credentials or physical access to their servers." Marisol nodded. "Leave that to me. We'll spin a cover story to gain entry. Perhaps claim you're doing a security audit." I hesitated. "Won't they call me out?" She smiled with confidence born of countless legal battles. "Your position as a longtime employee gives you plausible access. We'll draft a memo signed by Mrs. Beaumont herself." I stared at the ceiling, adrenaline and fear swirling. "And Mateo?" She placed a reassuring hand on mine. "He'll be cleared once we submit these motions. But until Croswell stops, he remains in jeopardy." I thanked her and left, heart buoyed by her plan. I felt the first flicker of hope since I'd overheard that midnight conspiracy. The next morning, I arrived at the Beaumont estate before dawn. The sprawling grounds were silent, except for the hum of the greenhouse heater and the distant call of a gull from the nearby lake. I found Mrs. Beaumont in her sunroom, tending to orchids in delicate porcelain pots. "Good morning," she said, startled but grateful. She wore a silk robe, her usual poise tempered by red-rimmed eyes. I offered a folder. "Marisol sent over a draft memo for security access, signed by you." She scanned it. "Security audit, internal review. Code, Project Nightingale." She hesitated, then signed with a fluid flourish. "Do whatever it takes." I tucked the memo into my apron and slipped away before she could change her mind. Outside, I sent Marisol a text. "Done." Mrs. Beaumont signed. By midday, I escorted Shane, a wiry man in thick glasses, through the lower-level corridors to Croswell's secured server room. Our forged memo granted us badge swipe access, though strict orders echoed in every hallway. Security audit only, no deviations. Inside, Shane worked swiftly, plugging his forensic workstation into the main console. I waited by the door, heart pounding as alarms hummed softly. After 10 tense minutes, he gave me a thumbs up. "I've extracted the metadata, timestamps, IP logs, file hash mismatches. Absolutely fabricated." I exhaled, relief flooding me. "You can compile a report?" He nodded. "It'll take me until tomorrow evening, but it's bulletproof." We slipped out undetected, adrenaline still crackling. I texted Marisol. "Got it. Prep for filing tomorrow." That evening, I joined Mateo at home, clutching Shane's encrypted drive. He'd cooked spaghetti, his way of comforting me, and we ate in silence under the dim light. "I think we might win," I said, setting the drive on the coffee table. He reached across, squeezing my hand. "I knew you'd find a way." I met his gaze. "I'm scared, but I couldn't let them bury you." He drew me close. "We're in this together." Early next morning, Marisol led me to the county clerk's office. Her team filed the emergency motions, the injunction against the proxy agreement, the motion to admit the metadata report, and a petition to vacate any police report based on the fabricated logs. The clerk stamped each page, and we walked out triumphant. Back at the Beaumont estate, I informed Mrs. Beaumont. She wept with relief, hands trembling as she offered me tea. "They nearly broke us," she whispered, voice thick. "You saved my family." I shook my head. I just did what was right. But the fight's not over. Crosswell will retaliate. She nodded. Then we prepare. We stand together. As I descended the marble staircase, I felt both weary and resolute. I had gambled my job, and perhaps my life, to save Mateo and the Beaumont legacy. The path ahead would test every ounce of courage and cunning I possessed. But for the first time, I believed we could win. Update 2. The morning after filing the injunction felt surreal. Dawn's pale light filtered through kitchen blinds as I poured coffee for Mateo and me, the jitter of caffeine matching my nerves. Outside, the estate grounds lay still, but in my mind the gears of Crosswell's revenge were already turning. Marisol had warned me, once you strike at Crosswell, he'll counterstrike harder. I glanced at the stack of motions she'd filed, 350 pages of affidavits, exhibits, and expert reports. They formed a fortress of evidence. But paper could be shredded, and courts could be delayed. We needed public pressure too. That afternoon, I slipped into Helena Beaumont's office, under the guise of sorting ledger files. She sat behind her expansive mahogany desk, posture taut with fatigue. "Ms. Alvarez," she greeted softly, "thank you for your diligence. But I worry. Crosswell won't stop at legal maneuvers." I swallowed. "We're scheduling a press briefing to announce the injunction and reveal the conspiracy to the financial press. Exposing Damien Cross publicly will limit his options." Helena nodded slowly. "Do it." By late afternoon, the estate's library, a room lined with leather-bound volumes and game tables, had been transformed into an ad hoc media center. Dozens of reporters milled about, cameras set on tripods, notebooks in hand. Helena, flanked by Marisol and me, prepared her statement. I stood behind a row of microphones, clutching a sheaf of talking points. Mateo hovered by the doorway, quietly supportive. His uniforms might smell of car shampoo, but his face shone with pride. At precisely 4 p.m., Helena stepped forward, voice steady but eyes glistening. "Greater than Helena Beaumont, I stand before you not just as the matriarch of Beaumont Asset Holdings, but as a witness to betrayal and blackmail. My family's empire, built over 3 generations, faced ruin at the hands of Crosswell & Co.'s CEO, Damien Cross. He threatened to frame my innocent husband's friend, Mateo Alvarez, for embezzlement unless I signed over control of our company. Thanks to the courage of Miss Celeste Alvarez, our housekeeper, and the diligent work of attorney Marisol Cruz, we uncovered his forged proxy documents and fraudulent surveillance logs. Today, we have secured an injunction preventing any transfer of assets and have opened a formal criminal investigation into Mr. Cross's actions." Flashes burst as reporters shouted questions. I nodded politely, handing out copies of the injunction order. One reporter asked, "Ms. Alvarez, did you ever fear for your safety?" I cleared my throat. "Yes. But exposing the truth was more important than personal risk." Another jab. "Does this scandal threaten the broader financial market?" Helena replied sharply, "We're working with regulators to ensure market stability. This was an isolated act of corporate malfeasance, not an industry-wide crisis." The briefing concluded amid a flurry of photos and video. The world now saw Crosswell as the villain. I hoped it would deter further attacks, but I knew our battle had only just begun. That evening, I found Marisol in her office going over deposition schedules. "How did it go?" I asked. "Better than I expected," she said, rubbing her temples. "Public exposure forces Crosswell to defend himself on 2 fronts. We've scheduled his deposition for next week, and Mrs. Beaumont's testimony will be compelling. But he's already trying to delay, filing motions for change of venue and additional discovery." I sat, exhausted. "What can I do to help?" She looked at me kindly. "Keep gathering any correspondence, emails, memos, anything, to show a pattern of coercion. And be careful. Crosswell's next move could be personal." My stomach flipped. I'd suspected as much when his counsel tried to grill me about my background, but the press conference had shown me the power of truth. "Understood," I said. A late-night intrusion. 2 nights later, around midnight, I bolted awake to the distant creak of the front gate. My apartment was silent, only the hum of city lights outside. I tiptoed to the living room window, peered through the blinds, and saw a dark sedan slip into the parking lot. Headlights off, it edged toward the side door. Adrenaline surged. I woke Mateo, whispering urgently. He grabbed his jacket. We crept to the door. Peering through the peephole, I saw two figures in dark clothing slipping under the balcony. They moved too deliberately to be homeless kids. My mind raced. Crosswell's hired men. They wanted to retrieve evidence, destroy the copied files. Or worse. I whispered, "Call Marisol. Now." Mateo fumbled the phone. She's not answering. Her line's busy. We watched the figures tug at the side door lock, straining with a crowbar. It gave way with a snap. The door swung open. Without thinking, I grabbed a heavy lamp and flung it at the intruders. It shattered against the wall, sending them scattering with curses. The first figure whirled, flashlight beam cutting across my face. His eyes gleamed with menace. He lunged at the dishes cabinet. "Get the drive!" he roared. I remembered the USB drive hidden in my tote, the metadata evidence. Heart pounding, I grabbed it and dashed toward the balcony stairs. Mateo yelled, "Run!" We fled into the night, adrenaline fueling our flight through darkened corridors. We reached Marisol's office building within minutes. The lobby was empty, doors locked. Desperation clawed at me until I spotted a side entrance marked, "After Hours Access." Its keypad blinked. "Code is 4729, Mateo recited, having heard Marisol speak in confidence once. The door clicked open. Inside, we slammed it shut and raced to Marisol's desk. Flashing the drive, I gasped, "They tried to break in!" She sprang from her chair, eyes laser-focused. "Grab everything. Photocopies, digital backups, original notes. We're moving tomorrow night to secure a safe house." I watched as she packed files into a secure case. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. This fight had gone from courtrooms to our doorsteps, preparing for trial. The next day, life resumed its routine. Public hearings, depositions, and endless document reviews. But after sundown, Marisol arranged refuge at her mother's countryside home, a stone cottage with no obvious connection to her practice. There we moved the case files, copied digital data onto multiple encrypted drives, and planned our final legal strategy. Serving as witness at Crosswell's deposition, I sat across from Damian Cross in a sterile conference room, under oath. His arrogance was striking. Tailored suit, slicked back hair, eyes that belied no remorse. Marisol led with her questions. "Mr. Cross, please explain the circumstances under which you obtained Mrs. Beaumont's signature." Cross smirked. "She willingly signed the documents. No coercion. Ms. Alvarez is mistaken." I felt my pulse quicken. Marisol handed me the flash drive. "Ms. Alvarez, would you identify Exhibit C, this file?" I took a breath. "Yes. These are metadata logs showing the signature was applied at 11:17 p.m., 90 minutes after I saw Mrs. Beaumont leave unconscious." Cross's lawyer objected, but Marisol pushed on, presenting notary expert testimony on the forged signature. Each exhibit chipped away at Cross's denials. By the end, Cross's face was stone. Leaving the room, I felt a wave of vindication and dread. The final hearing on the proxy injunction was tomorrow, and our entire case rested on one last motion. That night, as we reviewed witness statements by candlelight, I realized how far my life had strayed, from humble housekeeping to the epicenter of a corporate war. Mateo slept fitfully on the sofa, exhaustion etched on his face. I brushed his hair back, thinking, I risked everything, our home, our safety, to protect him. I would not fail now. The courthouse chamber for the final injunction hearing felt cavernous and cold. Reporters waited in the back row as I took the witness stand one last time. Marisol guided me through key moments, overhearing Cross's threats, securing the proxy documents, and orchestrating the metadata extraction. Each answer was precise, unwavering. In closing, Simmons addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor, we have shown clear evidence of criminal extortion, forgery of corporate documents, and malicious framing of an innocent man. The request for proxy authority is therefore invalid, and any signatures executed under such duress should be vacated." Damian Cross's attorney countered with procedural objections, but the weight of our evidence was undeniable. The judge, A stern woman known for her integrity reviewed the exhibits one by one. At last, she issued her ruling. Greater than judge, the court finds in favor of the petitioner. The proxy agreement is null and void, and Beaumont Asset Holdings maintains its rightful governance. The court also refers Ms. Alvarez's testimony to criminal prosecutors for possible charges of extortion and coercion against Mr. Cross. A hush fell, then the courtroom erupted in muted applause. I exhaled so hard I thought I might faint. Outside, I found Mateo waiting, tears in his eyes. He enveloped me in a hug. "We did it," he whispered. I nodded, voice thick. "You're safe." That evening, back at the countryside safe house, the files were finally secure. Marisol toasted with hot cocoa. "You were incredible, Celeste." I shook my head. "I only did what anyone would do." She smiled, a tear shining. "No. Few would risk everything for the truth." As I lay in bed that night, the moonlight through the window reminded me how close we'd come to losing everything. But we'd won. The Beaumont empire was intact. Mateo was exonerated. And Crosswell and Company faced criminal charges. I drifted towards sleep, determined that tomorrow I would return to the Beaumont estate, not as a housekeeper terrified for her life, but as Celeste Alvarez, the woman who knew too much and would speak out for justice, no matter the cost. Update 3. The morning sun filtered through the oaks as I drove back to the Beaumont estate in my old sedan, the same car that had ferried me to Marisol's office weeks ago. I passed the front gate, noting the security cameras newly installed by Crosswell's team. Their presence was a silent reminder. Despite the court's ruling, vigilance remained essential. I squared my shoulders and stepped through the marble foyer, greeted by the hushed bustle of staff preparing for the day's work. Inside, I found Mrs. Beaumont in the conference room, poring over quarterly financial reports. Her fingers hovered over the projection screen. When she saw me, relief softened her expression. "Celeste," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I can't thank you enough." I offered a small smile. "I'm glad it's over." She studied me for a moment. "We still need to prepare for Crosswell's bankruptcy filings and potential appeals. And the public image recovery." I nodded. "I'll help. Rebuilding trust." In the days that followed, our focus shifted from courtroom drama to corporate rehabilitation. Crosswell and Company, reeling from criminal referrals and lost credibility, filed for bankruptcy protection. Beaumont Asset Holdings convened a special board meeting to shore up investor confidence. I sat in on the meeting, an honor I never imagined, watching Mrs. Beaumont deliver a measured address. Greater than Crosswell & Co.'s actions were a blatant assault on our integrity. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to transparency and ethical leadership. We will partner with regulators to strengthen industry standards and ensure no other family endures what we have faced. Board members nodded, stock analysts scribbled notes, and the company's public relations director prepared a press release. Afterward, Mrs. Beaumont invited me to lunch in the garden pavilion, a sun-dappled enclave adorned with white roses and wicker furniture. We ate simple salads and lemonade, the world feeling momentarily serene. "Your courage saved my family's legacy," she said. "How are you holding up?" I touched my chest. "It's been exhausting, but I feel stronger." She reached across the table. "If you ever need more support, financial or otherwise, don't hesitate to ask. You have a home here beyond employment." Her words warmed me more than the sun. I realized that what began as a job had evolved into something deeper, a bond of mutual respect and gratitude. Mateo's new opportunity. At home, Mateo's life began to shift as well. With his name cleared, the car wash offered him a promotion to shift supervisor, a pay raise that meant we could finally consider moving from our cramped apartment. One evening, he surprised me with a framed photo of us taken years ago, dusty aprons, tired grins, and the sign above the diner reading M&A Coffee and Donuts. He set it on our mantel. "I want us to have a real home," he said, eyes bright. "And I owe you every good thing." I traced his finger on the glass. "We'll get there." His support steadied me as the estate's demands grew. Public recognition. Spring arrived with a new challenge. The local business journal nominated me for its Everyday Heroes feature. A journalist interviewed me in the very study where I'd first heard Crosswell's plot. Under the same crystal chandelier, I recounted my journey. Greater than I was simply doing my job when I stumbled upon a conspiracy. But I knew silence wasn't an option. Courage isn't about armor, it's about acting when it matters most. The resulting article ran with a bold headline, "Housekeeper Battles Corporate Thief, Saves Finance Empire." The story went viral locally, and I received letters of thanks from neighbors, friends of Mateo's who'd frequented his diner, and even Beaumont's staff, many of whom had previously treated me as invisible. One afternoon, I found a bouquet of sunflowers at my desk, card signed, "With deepest gratitude, Team Beaumont." My heart swelled. Recognition was bittersweet, but it affirmed that truth could transcend social boundaries. Community outreach. As Beaumont Asset Holdings worked to restore its public image, Mrs. Beaumont launched a philanthropic arm to give back, the Beaumont Foundation for Ethical Finance. She invited me to co-chair its first initiative, an internship program for low-income youth interested in finance careers. Together, we designed a curriculum combining mentorship, financial literacy workshops, and real-world training within the estate's offices. The first cohort of interns arrived in June, bright-eyed and eager. I led tours of the trading floor, once silent after Croswell's demise, and explained how ethical conduct mattered as much as profit margins. At their graduation, I watched as they accepted certificates with hope kindling in their eyes. This was the true legacy I'd helped safeguard. Not just a family empire, but opportunities for the next generation. Confronting Croswell. Despite Croswell & Co.'s bankruptcy, Damian Cross remained defiant. His lawyers filed appeals and slander suits against me and Marisol, accusing us of defamation. I spent long nights drafting responses with Marisol's guidance. We confronted Croswell at a mediation hearing, Marisol presenting final affidavits showing Cross's personal involvement in extortion, and my own testimony reinforcing every detail. Cross's illusion of control crumbled further under legal scrutiny. The mediation ended in a settlement. Cross agreed to public apology, financial restitution to Beaumont, and withdrawal of all suits. He vanished from local business circles, a cautionary tale of unethical ambition. Homecoming at the estate. One crisp autumn day, Mrs. Beaumont invited me and Mateo to the estate's annual charity gala. I slipped into a sapphire gown, far removed from my usual uniform, and Mateo donned a tailored suit from a grateful benefactor. The grand ballroom glittered with fairy lights and crystal chandeliers. Beaumont Foundation interns mingled with donors and board members. As we entered, Helena guided us to the head table. To my astonishment, she stood and tapped her glass for silence. Greater than tonight, we honor not only the philanthropy and resilience of this company, but also the extraordinary courage of Celeste Alvarez. Without her bravery, none of us would be here. Celeste, please accept this token of our gratitude. She presented me with a small engraved plaque. Beaumont Foundation Guardian Award, Celeste Alvarez. Applause cascaded over me. My cheeks burned, eyes misting. Mateo squeezed my hand. The moment crystallized every sacrifice, every fear faced in that midnight study. A new beginning. The gala ended well past midnight, and as guests filtered away, Mrs. Beaumont arranged a ride for us. Mateo and I strolled through the moonlit gardens, roses glowing silver. "Do you ever miss your old life?" he asked, voice soft. I considered the question, the long hours, the constant danger, the unexpected journey from housekeeper to hero. "I miss the simplicity," I admitted, "but I'm grateful for who I've become." He kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you, for your courage, your integrity." I smiled. "And I'm proud of you for standing by me." By year's end, Beaumont Asset Holdings regained its status as a pillar of ethical finance. The Beaumont Foundation expanded nationwide, sponsoring community centers and financial literacy programs. The estate's vaulted corridors echoed no more with secret plots, only lively discussions of mentorship and investment seminars. Mateo left the diner to become a junior analyst with Beaumont, an unexpected yet fitting next step. His hands, once scraped from car washes, now typed financial models and built spreadsheets. We moved into a cozy condo near the estate, our first true home together. As I dusted the bookshelves in my new study, now separate from my old uniforms domain, I reflected on the journey. The cost had been high, sleepless nights, threats to my safety, and a constant undercurrent of fear. I'd risked my livelihood and reputation, but gained something far greater: purpose, partnership, and a legacy of courage. One evening, alone in the library, I discovered a journal left by Mrs. Beaumont on the reading table. her personal reflections through the crisis. On the last page, she wrote, "Greater than in truth, our wealth was never measured in assets alone, but in the strength of our community." Celeste Alvarez reminded us that heroes come in many forms, and that justice demands the bravest among us to stand. I closed the journal, heart full. The housekeeper who knew too much had found her calling, not in cleaning crystal or polishing silver, but in shining light on corruption and building a more just world. Update 4. The first winter snow dusted the Beaumont estate in a hush of white as I drove up the long driveway toward the manor. Icicles hung like crystal daggers from the eaves, and the fountain in the courtyard lay still under frozen water. Inside, holiday preparations were in full swing. Evergreen garlands draped the banisters, and the scent of spiced cider drifted from the kitchen. Yet beneath the festive cheer, an unmistakable undercurrent of gratitude and renewal pulsed through the halls. I stepped into the foyer to find Mrs. Beaumont overseeing a team of decorators. Her silver hair was swept up in an elegant twist, and she flashed me a weary but genuine smile. "Celeste," she greeted, pulling me into a quick embrace. "You've joined us just in time for the annual Beaumont Winter Ball. Tonight's proceeds will fund next spring's expansion of the Beaumont Foundation's internship program." I nodded, feeling a warm glow. Over the past year, I'd gone from anonymous housekeeper to co-chair of the Foundation's youth initiative, mentoring students and shaping their first steps in finance. Fellow staff members greeted me with nods of respect, and interns sought my advice on career paths. The Foundation's impact had grown beyond anything I'd imagined that first tense night in the study. A final reckoning. Weeks earlier, Crosswell & Co.'s affair had rippled into federal probes. Damian Cross faced indictments for extortion and corporate fraud. In a turn of poetic justice, his courtroom hearing was scheduled on the same night as the Winter Ball, a stark reminder of the contrast between his fate and ours. I rose during the reception to take a discreet call from Marisol. "Court accepts our testimony. Damian Cross enters a plea. Sentencing is next month. He'll spend years in prison." My fingers tightened around my champagne flute. Justice, long delayed, would soon be served, a personal milestone. As gala guests swirled around crystal chandeliers and live string quartets, Mateo led me to a quiet alcove overlooking snow-laden gardens. His cheeks were flushed with cold and champagne, eyes bright with pride. "Celeste," he began, voice soft yet firm, "this year has been the hardest and most amazing of my life. You risked everything for me and for justice. I can't imagine a future without you by my side." My heart thundered. I'd loved this man since our humble beginnings, sharing coffee and dreams under neon diner lights. Now he spoke words I'd longed to hear. He knelt, producing a small velvet box. I gasped as he opened it to reveal a delicate ring. Diamonds set in white gold, the facets caught candlelight like stars. "Will you marry me?" he asked, eyes shining. Tears sprang to my eyes. "Yes," I whispered, voice trembling. "1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger. And in that moment, the world shifted. From housekeeper to advocate, from fear to triumph, from ordinary life to extraordinary love. Celebrations and legacies. The ball resumed with renewed vigor as word of our engagement spread. Mrs. Beaumont, ever gracious, toasted our future. To Celeste and Mateo, proof that integrity and love can conquer the greatest odds. Guests cheered, silver flutes clinked, and for a moment I stood at the heart of a world I once only observed from behind a feather duster. Spring's promise. By spring, the Beaumont Foundation's initiatives had flourished. The Scholarship Fund awarded its first dozen recipients. The mentorship program placed interns in summer rotations at leading firms, and the mobile outreach van, named the Crosswell Respite, as a cheeky nod to our nemesis, delivered financial literacy workshops to rural towns across Illinois. I traveled alongside Rosa Kim, our program director, gathering stories of families empowered by knowledge. One afternoon, we arrived in a small farming community, greeted by children waving "thank you" banners. Inside a modest church hall, I led a session on budget planning, watchful as families scribbled notes. A mother approached afterward, voice thick. "You've given us hope." My daughter can now dream of college. I swallowed the lump in my throat, hand on the mother's shoulder. You've earned it, I said, and we're here to help. Final reflections. Years later, I stand again before the Beaumont study, now my own home office where I edit the Foundation's quarterly reports. The crystal desk lamp flickers as I close a chapter of my journal, pages filled with the story of a housekeeper who knew too much and rose to protect her loved ones in a family empire. On the horizon, the first intern cohort of next year walks through the gates, briefcases in hand, bright with ambition. Mateo, now head of risk management at Beaumont Asset Holdings, joins me in greeting them, hand in hand. I turn to him, heart full. Can you believe we started this from a few photocopies and a promise to fight? He smiles, brushing a lock of hair from my face. And we built something lasting, together. As the sun sets over the estate's turrets, I close my laptop, lift my face to the spring breeze, and remember every sacrifice, every moment of fear, every triumph. From that midnight revelation to this life of purpose, I've learned that courage is born in unlikely places, and that one person's truth can reshape the world. As Celeste's journey shows, standing up for truth, even when your world trembles, can save lives and legacies. What's the bravest thing you've ever done to protect someone you love? Share your story below. I read every comment.